I call it the COVID cake. It's a bit like a COVID wedding cake, isn't it? Three tiers. Um, do I think it will work? I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, when it comes to any sort of government policy, I think we all have to be pretty skeptical. And the thing is, we don't know whether the science is actually right at the moment. We don't know what the experts are telling Number 10. We don't know the actual specifics. All we can gather is what they're telling us in the COVID briefings, etc. Do I think it will work? It could help. Also, what Sakir Starmer has his policy, he's supporting a circuit break lockdown, which he just wants the whole country locked down for 2 weeks and then mild restrictions put in place after that. So, there's quite a few policies up in the air. I mean, it's so the time. I'm going to be just that cringe journalist. I'm going to say, in this current climate, in these unprecedented times, let's be honest, it's a trial and error situation, isn't it? Actually, funny enough, I'm actually not in London specifically. I'm in Hertfordshire, but it kind of borders some boroughs of London. So literally 10 minutes down the road, I'd technically be in London. That's sort of where I live. My nearest tube stations are Stanmore and Edgware, which are both just 15-minute drives away. So, and that is technically London. And it's so funny because I live probably around 7 to 10 minutes away from my grandparents. They are in tier two, and me and my family in where we are, we're currently in tier one. So it's very confusing actually, because it seems as though even within my family and even just a short distance away, there are different rules for different households, and it's kind of tricky because I can see the arguments arising, going, "You're allowed to do this, no, but we're allowed to do that," and it's so funny how some restaurants 5 minutes down the road from one another. Some restaurants can have mixed households outside of London in Hertfordshire. 5 minutes down the road, literally down the A41, any restaurant in Edgware, no, you can't mix. So it's very confusing, I actually think, and I'm not sure how these tiers, whether it will confuse the matter and or whether it will make things any simpler. I did find it quite funny how you were talking about the modelling and the algorithms, because obviously when it came to the GCSE and A-level results, this algorithm that the government seemed to have got it so completely wrong, hysterically wrong, where students missed out on places of university. I would think GCSE students, if they didn't go for their predicted grades, a lot of them would have missed out for places at university in the future. This has impacts. So it's just, I find it so funny how or you can have all the algorithms and all of this modeling in the world, but does it actually make a difference to people's lives? That is what we've got to ask ourselves. And quite frankly, is it more confusing? I think so. It's currently in production. See, I'm currently split down the middle actually, because would the circuit breaker even make that much of a difference? Because when we had a 3 month lockdown in the UK throughout the main outbreak, throughout the first wave, so to speak, obviously there is this second wave that has come. So these drastic draconian lockdowns, as Boris Johnson put them at the time, do they actually work, or are they as effective as we want them to be? Or but it didn't. But a 3 month complete lockdown didn't eliminate the virus. So this is what we have to say. So if a 3 month super strict draconian lockdown didn't eliminate the virus, then will a circuit breaker? Sorry, when I say three, I meant 3 month lockdown didn't break the virus, didn't eliminate the virus. Will a 2 week circuit break do anything? This is what I'm asking. So, or will this just have continued negative effects on the economy? That's the questions that are going through my mind, and I think obviously these are the questions that Number 10 are obviously asking themselves. It's all well and good calling a 2 week lockdown a circuit break, but in another three weeks, in another month, 2 months, will we face the same problem again? The fact of the matter is, until we have an effective, proven vaccine that works, we are going to have to live with this virus. I love it. I love it. You call it the pandemic experience. It's almost as if you're buying a ticket. Welcome to the Pandemic Express. I mean, the thing is with Saki Starmer at the moment, he's in a no lose situation, because he's in a position where he can provide effective opposition to whatever the government is saying, and no matter what happens, he could say, "Oh, I told you so anyway." So, in fact, he is in a very privileged position politically at the moment. I think we have to think to ourselves that obviously the health of the country is of the paramount importance, but when it comes to politics, there are always going to be these political games at play here. So the fact is, will we in the war, if we go back to World War II with Winston Churchill, he worked with Clement Attlee for this national unity government. So the fact that I think Keir Starmer is treading on very thin ice here because he wants to appear to be behind the Prime Minister, but then he wants to also appear to provide effective opposition. As Boris Johnson, he doesn't want to appear as though he's just following Labour's lead on this. So, I mean, I would like to see a bit more cohesion and a bit more actual cooperation there, because I think if we're going to talk about this bluntly without being pessimistic, this is a war on this virus, and I think something needs to be done. I think the country needs to be united and not at each other's throats. Bearing in mind, there's also Brexit happening underneath the surface of this all, so it's a very interesting time politically for our country. I agree. Yeah. Yes, we did. Oh, stop it. You've left. Well, I got to tell you, there was also a absolutely fantastic film that he starred in alongside Keira Knightley called Colette, which was about the French author Colette, and he played the husband of Keira Knightley's character. He, I think, was absolutely fantastic in that. He was actually, I would say, quite ruthless. Not him as a person, but the character he was playing was quite a ruthless character at times, locking Colette in rooms so she can write books as part of his kind of production house, and then they became the toast of Paris with their books. And his character took the work of Colette and kind of make he put his own name to it. So it's a very interesting part there. Him and Lily James are actually starring together in an upcoming project, so that's why I think they developed this bond. But I got to tell you, this story has actually made me quite angry online because I've been seeing a lot of people going against Lily for this. And I really think that is out of order, if I'm going to be honest, because this is a very interesting relationship here, because in previous interviews, Dominic has claimed, or he's expressed certain opinions about infidelity as a concept, and he hasn't confirmed this strictly, but he has kind of hinted of the fact that he is in an open marriage with his wife, Catherine Fitzgerald. Bearing in mind, I want to say that she's an Anglo-Irish aristocrat, and they live in a very gorgeous house called Glencastle. So there's obviously some sort of relationship benefit there. After the scandal, after the paparazzi pictures emerged, Dominic and Catherine kind of hosted this kind of Little Britain style press call. Did you see the sketch on Little Britain with the politician? Mm. With the notes, yes. Mm. and saying all was well, the marriage is strong. Even though literally the day before in Italy, Dominic West and Lily James were, shall we say, very handsy. But this is the thing about Lily, and this is why I got quite angry about some of the reaction online, was because even though Lily might, we can speculate whether she knew he was married or not. There is an argument to be made. However, he is the married one. He's the one that played, shall we say in words, played away from home, so to speak. So Lily wasn't actually, it's not Lily's fault here. It's Dominic's responsibility to say no, if that makes sense. Does it make sense? Well, if he's in a, if, if he's in an open relationship, he can effectively do what he wants, and therefore the note could be very much true and not just a press stunt. What I think it is, we should note here is that Lily does have a film coming out on Netflix very soon called Rebecca. It's suspenseful, it's romantic, but it's also this kind of psychological thriller. So I would describe it as a horror film within a psychological thriller film within a romance story. That's how I would describe it. It's based on the novel from Daphne du Maurier. It's also, obviously, there was the 1940s version, famously directed by Alfred Hitchcock, produced by David O. Selznick, the producer of Gone with the Wind. Huge names. There was another version, I think, in the 1980s, the 1990s, with Diana Rigg, who played Mrs. Danvers. So, this film Rebecca is a very well-known film. It's also got the likes of Sam Riley in. It's got the likes of Kristen Scott Thomas in. I'm not saying that all of this hype is a big publicity stunt for the film. I'm not saying that at all. But this isn't going to do the film any harm in terms of viewers. The fact that there is a massive scandal involving Lily James, and all of a sudden she's got a massive film on Netflix coming out. Okay. Very romantic. Yes, they share, they do reportedly share an agent as well. And as I said earlier, they are co-stars in an upcoming project together as well. So it's known that they obviously have a close bond, whether it's a very tactile friendship, or should I say an overly tactile friendship, or whether this is an actual relationship. Obviously, that's not confirmed. What we do know is that the pictures do suggest so a very, in terms of just a relationship. I'm not talking about dating as in a person to person relationship in contact. They obviously have a tactile relationship. For all we know, right? Lily James could be in the bubble with Dominic West and his wife and the agent, for all we know. So, and especially there are all of these rumors, of the previous comments in previous interviews hinting at an open marriage. There is more to this story, but what I don't appreciate is the negative reaction towards Lily here. And that is what I don't appreciate in this, I quote, slut shaming of Lily. That is never okay. Never okay. I was talking more about the social reaction rather than the press reaction. Obviously, Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And if the pictures have shown, we've seen also not just Robert Pattinson and Colin Farrell in heavy prosthetics, but we've also seen stunt doubles dressed as dressed as the Cape Crusader on harnesses at the top of Liverpool's buildings as well. And you're right, there are some absolutely beautiful. There is beautiful architecture there. You've got this sort of Art Deco in some of the pictures that I've seen on the Mail Online. You've got this almost, dare I say, Art Deco style building, which kind of adds to that Gothic sort of feel. That those kind of those motifs at the top of those pylons, very interesting as well. What I will say is production did originally start in Glasgow at the beginning of 2020, but it was halted, and it was rumoured that Robert Pattinson did contract COVID and tested positive for the virus. However, Warner Brothers actually, they didn't actually confirm that. But what we do know is that filming has resumed in Liverpool. And actually, as well, if the city is going into a proper lockdown, it is actually a good opportunity, because if they are in their bubble and nobody else is on the streets, that gives them the space to film in quiet and to fully concentrate and to not have to weave their way around the public and access and all of that sort of stuff as well. If we think about it like that. That was before. That was before the restrictions, not after the restrictions. Mm, very, very. You can see those heavy prosthetics, can't you? You can just see them. They're great, aren't they? Well, what's actually very interesting is during the pandemic, Brie Larson, she set up her own YouTube channel, and she released a video saying all the movies that she auditioned for, and she actually explained the casting process in so what actually happens is I think casting directors send scripts out to agents, and they send scripts out to actors, and then actors have to go through this process of testing, and they see the casting director, and they meet the producers, and they meet the director. If we're looking specifically at Colin Farrell, all you have to do is look at some of his previous resume. So if we look at him in the Yorgos Lanthimos productions, The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, we can see such depth to his performances, and a lot of diversity. I mean, I know the word diversity has now become a buzzword in terms of kind of representation, but actually, if we look at the sort of parts in which he plays, he's a very diverse sort of actor in the roles in which he can actually play on screen. He can, and also if we look at even Dumbo, he can play nice characters, he can play lovable characters, he can also play villains. So I think it comes down to, in terms of this, it's not about the image, because we see the heavy prosthetics in the image just below my screen. It also comes down to how the actor can convey themselves, and I think there is a big team working on a film, especially a massive Warner Brothers film like the Batman, Christopher Nolan director. and as well, part of the DC franchise. That's what I was going to say. So you know, there's going to be a lot of process here. They are brutal, especially even in television production. So the Great British Bake Off had to the cast. Well, I say the cast, the bakers, the judges, and the crew all had to leave their family for weeks on end to be in this bubble in order for a production to go ahead. So this is a practice that's done as well. Britain's Got Talent. All of the participants, if they were competing in troops, they all had to become bubbles as well. What I can say about the film industry is, so far, in terms of the new restrictions, especially in Liverpool, we don't know how badly affected the film industry in terms of production is at the moment. What I can say is guidance from the British Film Commission, they've not been, that guidance hasn't been updated since September the 29th. So especially if you can be in a bubble, if there are stringent testing, if there are very strict lockdown measures in terms of how you isolate yourselves as a bubble, then listen, if a film needs to be made, there is money to make it. It's going to be brutal. Bye, Colin. I'm sure it will actually make the films that much more satisfying for the actors, seeing their film on the big screen, knowing it was done during a pandemic. And you can only imagine the sort of questions that are going to be asked in the press tour when they eventually do it. I say press tour. We could still be doing virtual interviews. What I will say in other film news, there's actually a very exciting project that Netflix have recently announced. Coming from Adam McKay. He directed the film Vice, starring Christian Bale. That was, of course, about Vice President Dick Cheney and Amy Adams. Listen to this cast, Jamie, because this is insane. So it's called Don't Look Up. Leonardo DiCaprio has joined a cast of Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Kate Blanchett, Jonah Hill, Himesh Patel, Ariana Grande, Timothy Chalamet. I mean, those names, the list. Expensive. I mean, forget what sort of film it's going to be. Just could you imagine the money that Netflix is spending just on securing that cast? You've got the top of the top in terms of the music industry with Ariana Grande, and then you have Meryl Streep, who obviously is top of the top of the film industry. Then obviously Adam McKay as a director is a highly sought after director, and then you've got the likes of Timothy Chalamet, who's so highly in demand after Call Me by Your Name. He was going to have the French Dispatch coming out this year as well. Himesh Patel was just in the Danny Boyle film yesterday alongside one of my favourites. We've been discussing her earlier, Lily James. This is quite the cast alongside the likes of Kate Blanchett. Of course, I don't even need to talk about her projects because she's just a legendary actress in Hollywood, as well as Jonah Hill. Of course, Jonah is very famous for his part in The Wolf of Wall Street, amongst various other projects. I think so too. Obviously, she took a long break from acting, or at least a year's break, to focus on her work with a bipartisan organisation called Represent Us, which I think wants to eliminate big money and corruption. Get that away from the U.S. political system, and I know she was becoming a big spokesperson for that bipartisan company, um, going into schools. If we're going to actually look into Jennifer Lawrence in terms of her political history, there's actually a lot to delve into there because it's very, very interesting. Obviously, she came from Kentucky. Kentucky is one of those deep red states. It's a solid red state, and we fully expect it to go red in the upcoming presidential election. And she even says she was brought up Republican. And obviously, in her work with Represent Us, she works with both Democrats and Republicans. There are prominent Democrats and Republicans on the board working together in this bipartisan organization. So it's clear that Jennifer Lawrence works with both Republicans and Democrats. But it's very interesting. She's been very critical of Trump and his particular policies, particularly when it comes to Planned Parenthood over in the US. It's some of these politics. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was a Republican governor of California, and he's been very critical of Trump. So a lot of people look at US politics from this country, and we look at this perspective in terms of celebrity and thinks it's very, you think it's either red or blue, black and white, but actually when it comes to certain policies and overall party allegiances, it's not a very red or blue issue. Fantastic. Yeah, this was Don't Look Up. I want to talk. Let's talk about Meryl for a bit, because I think it's safe to say that she is one of the greatest character actresses of our time, if not the greatest character actress of all time. Me being the journalism fan I am, I couldn't stop in lockdown watching The Post, where she plays Kay Graham, and that's all about the McNamara Papers, the Pentagon Papers, as they're also known. And in terms of kind of this was kind of the scandal before Watergate, and you actually saw the start of the Watergate scandal at the end of that film. But her role in it is absolutely extraordinary. Devil Wears Prada. Her role as Margaret Thatcher as the Iron Lady. Very interesting to see how it compares to Gillian Anderson coming up in The Crown. Oh, I love it alongside Imagine. Oh, she is so funny. Oh, that I got to tell you, that film. I also watched that in lockdown, as it happens. It's so heartwarming, especially for a movie. There's no equivalent. Anna Coram. Mm. Yeah, no. I actually, I haven't seen the season yet. I've only, like most people, have seen teaser trailers. What I can say is if we think back to some of the early stories about, for example, Netflix when they were casting Emma Corrin, I think it was the Sun that got hold of the casting ad. So, and I think it was the casting ad that described the actress that they were looking for to play Diana had to be exceptional because she was playing a self harmer. So that casting ad, and I think it was broken in the press that they were going to show some of the self-harming sort of scenes. Now, I'm not sure how much has been shown. I haven't seen the season yet, but maybe that's if those stories are true, and if the season does show some of Diana's well-known disorders that she had, I know she had eating disorders, she had anemia. If the series does go into that, it's going to be very difficult for the princes to watch, I think, especially because Diana was very loved as a figure, but this could be a visualization that we maybe haven't seen before. Again, not sure if it will be in the series. I have no idea. What I think the trailer shown, we do see those kind of subtle, reflective sort of moments of Diana in the bath. That's what we have seen in the trailer. But if the casting ad is anything to go by, we could be in for some quite stark visualizations, which could be very difficult for the royal family to watch. Mm. Ah, Brett. Yeah. You mean five? You mean £5 and 99p per month? You said £5.99 per month. I was like, what? £599 a month for an old ITV program? I'm ashamed to say I don't actually have BritBox. I think I think well, I do know a lot of my journo friends have actually subscribed to BritBox purely to see Spit Image, and it's the best. It's the best. Cool. Well, what I will say is I do appreciate the dominatrix Pretty Patel that I did see. That was very funny. I know it was brilliant, but I think in terms of political comedy, listen, the US, I know their broadcasters aren't as regulated as the UK's broadcasters are. So I think you don't want, even though Spitting Image is on a subscription service and not on a linear broadcasting platform, and is therefore not exactly regulated by Ofcom. The thing is, due to the current climate and the unprecedented times, as I said, the thing is there an audience for it's in this country anyway for such nuanced programming that we find in the US, because I gotta say, SNL is so funny. But actually, I do know, speaking to a lot of my American friends, sometimes they think SNL crosses the line because SNL, they say, sometimes inflames the conversation. Oh, absolutely. But in this country, we need to be careful because we're not sure whether, at least in terms of comedy, there is that much of an appetite, especially because the BBC has been so under fire as recently of going for that kind of left wing woke style comedy and not really making fun of the left wing itself. So it's interesting. It's very interesting to see whether there is that sort of an appetite. And the thing is, this is the first season of Spitting Image after however many years. So this could be the warm up act. This could be the dipping your toe into the water, testing the water, and then maybe for season two, you're gonna dive off that diving board and go full on in, as you say. Well, I think next week we're actually going to see a rather big release in terms of Rebecca on Netflix, which should be really excited. I'm going to actually. I may be watching the film this week, so I might be able to give you a little sneak peek next week. But you know, listen. This is showbiz news, like all sort of news. It's ever changing, so you never know what's going to happen in Hollywood land and showbiz world. That's what maybe. Maybe we'll add some icing to that tier cake. Maybe muzzle tov, muzzle tov. Watford. Let's say Hertfordshire. Let's say Hertfordshire. Let's say not